This is a bit of a hot take, but it seems that, how do I say this? Friends and family of Cardivox Academy, what's going on? Mark here, and today, you probably notice I have moved, right? You can see these cool books that make me look very smart. They're not mine. I've never read them. My boxes, which I still have yet to unpack, and the fact that I'm wearing a flannel, which means all my clean clothes are dirty and all my unpacked clothes are still packed. So I'm going full mountain man. I didn't even trim the beard. I decided to embrace that. Today, because the studio space is not set up perfectly, it's very echoey. I decided to do a different video. We are going to have some reaction videos coming soon. Pretty excited about them. But today I wanted to talk about the very cool video that the Charismatic Voice, Kirk and Elizabeth, put up where they put a laryngoscope. They did a laryngyscopy of Will Ramos, who, if you live under a rock and you don't know who Will Ramos is, he's the vocalist of Lorna Shore, probably one of the most well-known metal vocalists of our current time. And I want to talk about it because if you are new to the channel, my name is Mark. I am a metal vocalist myself. My main band is Kardashev. We just released an album through Metal Blade, Liminal Right, check it out. And I'm also a vocal coach specializing in harsh tones and harsh noises. And usually I do reaction content where I break down the vocal techniques that are being used, or I give my best guess, because sometimes I don't know, right? And I make my living giving those types of lessons and doing the well. Not on YouTube, but YouTube's fun and it helps. So yeah, I want to talk about the video. I want to give kind of my insights, just because due to the nature of the channel being based solely around harsh vocals, I can't really not talk about it. That would be weird. So my first thing about this video that I want to mention is that I think it's a pretty big moment in metal vocal history. It's certainly not the first metal laryngoscopy to have happened. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But I think it's the first one that we've had happen on such a wide scale and with so much visibility. To give you kind of an example of why I think this, first and foremost, the Charismatic Voice is a huge channel, and it's a very, very, very good channel. Kirk and Elizabeth helped us build our channel. They gave us a lot of insight on how to read metrics and things like that, because they were the ones that knew how this works, right? Also, with that, it acts as a really good bridge. The Charismatic Voice acts as a really good bridge between metal and non-metal fans, right? Elizabeth started out not really doing as much metal content, but slowly eased into it. And now you see, metal content right up next to pop or, anything really. So it's a great channel that kind of brings in non-metal fans with metal fans in a way that's much more diplomatic than perhaps it has been over the past 15, 20, or 30 years. After all, many of us still remember the days where if people found out you were into metal, you were basically treated like a fool. Or I remember if you went to my high school, they said are you worried about the devil? Because he might get you. Those vocals, that screaming, what do you think that means? So the Charismatic Voice is bridging a really cool gap, not just amongst metal fans and non-metal fans, but also across some generations too. And that's a big thing. I don't think that there's necessarily been that visibility up until this point on metal vocals, especially from a scientific view. So that's one of the main reasons I think this is a big moment. Along with that, it really helps that Elizabeth has a very strong understanding of the voice. That's kind of an understatement, honestly. If you know about my channel, probably you know about hers also. If not, you learned about hers first. But she is an extraordinarily accomplished opera singer. She has performed all across the world. She has taught, she has competed and placed extremely highly. And she's been doing this forever. I have a reaction video to her, and basically the whole time I'm like, listen, this is an insane amount of control, because opera is like that. Opera is some people don't like opera, and I get it, but to me, opera is the fine dining of a lot of vocal technique, because it is all about technique and accuracy ramped up to the max. If there are any opera singers or opera fans out there that think I'm reducing what opera is, my apologies. Just not as an opera person myself. That's how I view it. Very, 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 very interesting vocal style, and one that requires, you can't be a good opera singer, in my opinion, unless you really know how the voice works. You got to be able to drive the car and also know the mechanics of it. Another really cool thing about the video that made it pretty legendary, in my opinion, is that Dr. Ingo Titze was involved. Now, if you're not familiar with Dr. Ingo Titze, that's fine. I think probably only vocal nerds and vocalists and singers are aware of him, but he is basically the Chad of all Chads when it comes to vocal science. He's a big deal. I actually had to type out some of his accomplishments because I can't remember them, and eventually the list got too big, so I had to condense it. But some of the things that he's done is he's written several books on the human voice, over 160 articles in the National Institute of Health. He teaches at the University of Iowa Department of Communication Sciences and Disorders. He himself is a very accomplished vocal scientist and professor. All of that undercuts a lot of what he's done. But if we talked about him, that would be the whole video. Basically, very accomplished, very smart. He's the person that a lot of, not all, but much of the current knowledge base of metal vocals, of vocals in general, and soon I think metal vocals comes from. So it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And it was so cool to see that, he was involved and to hear his observations in the room. I'm also very glad that they went with Will Ramos for the laryngoscopy. I mean, let's face it, there is a wide landscape of vocalists that they could have picked, and I hope that they do more. We're going to talk about that in a second. But Will Ramos was definitely a very good place to start. First and foremost, he's just really good, right? Like, I know that Lorna Shore may not be everybody's cup of tea. It seems like it's everybody's cup of tea. But he's very talented. Even if you don't like that kind of music, he is an insanely good example of relaxation and control and accuracy and tone, just all the things of metal vocal that we look for, at least within the style he sits. He's a really good example of that. And it also helps that he's very, very popular. He's got a celebrity status. Like, that's kind of an important thing when you want to pull more eyes onto something. If they had gone with somebody less well known, the video probably wouldn't have gotten as many views. That's just true. And if the ultimate goal of their video, which I think it is to broaden the understanding of metal vocals and get it more into the forefront, then picking the most popular person was the right choice. I think Will was an excellent choice because of that, and also because he's fucking good. Let's just be real. He's a great vocalist. So it's kind of like two birds with one stone. Another thing that I'm really hoping is that this sheds some visibility on previous studies of metal vocals that have been done and have been in the works actually for a little while. This is a really good example of how, up until the past couple years, at least that's how it feels to me, right? Metal vocals, it was really hard to get respect from anybody who wasn't a metal vocalist. If you're a metal vocalist out there, you certainly have the at least some sort of memory of people being outright like rude and like mean to you, or saying like, oh, I like the music except for the part that you're in, the part with the screaming. I just am going to pretend I don't hear that, right? Which is fine for people to have their preferences, but that's kind of a shitty way to say it, right? But, we were treated as non-musicians, and we were treated as, just making noise, and there aren't even any notes and things like that. But a lot of study has been done so far, and some of these laryngoscopies you can find online. So if you really liked Will's video, you can find some others. So Enrique Di Lorenzo, he is from the band Hideous Divinity, and he's actually a phoniatrician. Like, his job is understanding how the voice works and diagnosing disorders and helping people get through them in non-surgical ways. And he's published a couple papers actually, which I don't have the names of them memorized, but I pulled up because if you want to Google them, you certainly can. You may have to buy them from a journal. That's what I did, but he did one, which is what we have learned about extreme metal production, and he worked with Krzysztof Jazdebski, which is he's another vocal scientist who has studied metal vocals as well. And this is 19 pages of just very scientific, very, very interesting information on how metal vocals work. So the other one, I just closed it because I'm an idiot. The other one is really cool because it spotlights women, metal vocalists who are women, female extreme singing, phoniatric, acoustical, and aesthetic features. I haven't read those either of those yet, but I'm excited to. Also, Lauren Hart of Once Human. There's why do I want to say laryngoscopy? There's a laryngoscopy. Laryngoscopy? I don't know. There is a video of her vocal anatomy during some screaming. Brandon Kennedy of Unified Extreme Vocal Academy. he also has a laryngoscopy of false chord, fry, all these really cool sounds, throat singing. And I believe his laryngoscopy is the one that was used in Melissa Cross's Zen of Screaming DVD. And Melissa Cross, of course, you know, she's maybe not the person who started. The only reason I say that is because I don't know who the first person was, but she's the first person I think that people of my generation were aware of that said, you know, metal vocals can be professional. Metal vocals can be something that you train, that you perfect. It is more than just yelling, right? So that's very cool. I highly suggest, if you want more, I actually use Enrico and Brandon's YouTube videos in my lessons sometimes because they're that helpful. I'm not a big fan of people who are unfamiliar with vocal anatomy using laryngoscopies to teach themselves. We'll talk about that in a second. But anyway, very cool stuff. So I really want to exemplify that this video is a big video for the metal vocal community, and you know, it's going to hopefully shed light on the wider community that's out there and exists today, right? Now for some observations of my own. So watching Will Ramos's laryngoscopy video was kind of a roller coaster because there are some things that I absolutely expected. I was like, okay, that makes sense. Yep, that tracks. Yep, we've known about that for a while. And then there are other things where I was like, what the heck is going on there? Right? I think the main one you all know that I'm going to talk about is that laryngeal twist, right? That sort of like torsion. Torsion might not be the right word, but that sort of twist of the larynx where the area epiglottis. Actually, let me do this before we get started. I'm going to mention to you some terms that they're also in the Will Ramos video, but if you don't have memorized, some terms that I'm going to be using here for the next 5-10 minutes or so, just to kind of help you get some orientation. All right, first and foremost, we have the vocal folds. These are the folds that create our true voice. Hey, ha. They're the folds that we use to communicate. Most people use, and they create true chord phonation, right? That's where we get the most audible pitch. That's what we use to communicate, vibrate together, thin mucosal membrane. They're very good. They're very important. You need your vocal folds. Above that, we've got our false chords, our vestibular folds, right? Those chords are very important. Some people call them a second set of vocal cords. I don't love that. It's not my favorite because they function pretty differently. They also don't activate the same way. But that's what we have when we have the those types of noises, right? Above that, we've got the area epiglottic folds. These can vibrate and are involved in distortion as well. And the big basketball type things that they're connected to are the arytenoids, right? Now, the arytenoids are very cool because they're involved in distortion and they also move as the vocal folds adduct and abduct. There's a transverse arytenoidal muscle is what I believe it's called that sort of pinches and opens the vocal cords in the back. And then above that, we've got our epiglottis, and much of this is in the supraglottal space, the supraglottis. So there's your anatomy lesson. You all get 100% because I love you. That's all I know. Couple of things that were really cool, right? The laryngeal twist was the thing that really kind of blew my mind. I'll be honest. I have studied the voice, not to the extent that like Enrico or Izdebski or Ingo Titze have, of course. But I've studied the voice for quite a while. And I didn't know that was possible. Either that's a serious gap in my knowledge, but I think that was something that probably surprised most people who saw it. I do think it's really important to note that we can't at this point really know how much of an impact. Oh, sorry, my chair is squeaking. We can't really at this point know how much of an impact that has on the scream, although I suspect it has a pretty decent impact. The reason is because, and you heard Dr. Ingo Titze talk about it in the video, or just notice it, that by sort of twisting the larynx, the area epiglottic folds, they sort of came together and they weren't vibrating, at least that I saw, they weren't vibrating against each other like vocal folds, but they were vibrating like with each other, right? Not against, but with. And that's not something that you see a lot of. You do see, one thing that Will was doing is you do see the closure of the arytenoids and then the area epiglottic folds coming down with everything in the closure. That sort of small shape where the arytenoids come in over top of everything. That's one way, I should say, that we take a false chord and turn it into. That's learning that skill, how to move the arytenoids in that way. That's one of the ways that's done. And that's a harder thing for people to learn, just to be honest. Well, some people pick up on it pretty quick. It was interesting to see that the false chord, when he said he was going to do, he was like, oh, I'm going to do false chord, oh, I'm going to do fry. They looked pretty much the same. Now, that's not to say that they were the same, right? Because because the arytenoids are closing in, because the aryepiglottic folds are closing in over top of the vocal anatomy, we can't really see the vocal folds or the glottis. We don't really know what was happening below those points, right? So it would be disingenuous for me to say, oh, it's the exact same thing. But they are a lot more together and a lot more similar, which is what I had suspected in some of my previous reactions. I said, it sounds like he's really working his arytenoid cartilages a lot versus it being like this pure fritone. So it was cool to see that. I was like, okay, I do know something, I guess. So it was really cool to see that. Another thing that I saw that was really interesting was the lingual tonsil coming in. The tonsils affect the shape of our vocal tract, right? Some people have really big tonsils. Some people have really small tonsils. And that will affect the way that sound reverberates in your mouth. And sometimes people are a little bit concerned about getting their tonsils removed and how that's going to affect their voice. Well, I always say it's possible. I've never heard of tonsils being removed ruining a voice. I've never heard of that. But at one point, I don't remember which scream he was doing, the lingual tonsil kind of gets pulled in and is shaking. I don't know if it was shaking enough to be considered like in that moment a distortion mechanism, but it was pulling in, and I thought that was pretty interesting. And it looked like that action was what was partially pushing the epiglottis, that little trap door that covers your airway, looked like it was pushing the epiglottis kind of to the right, left, to the side. We'll say to the side, right? And that was really fascinating to me as well. So potentially certain screams have a little bit more tonsil action than we had initially thought, or at least than I had initially thought. They do shake when we do certain types of high vocals, when we're doing stuff like that, you can kind of feel them moving around. But it was interesting to see, and maybe they're a lot more active than I had thought. Another thing that I saw that was really interesting is that, there was a lot more constriction above the vocal folds, right? So in this supraglottis space up through the pharynx, like up through the laryngopharynx and the oropharynx, right? That's the space kind of where the back of your mouth goes down into your throat. You've got your pharynx is split up into three spaces. It's the pharynx is not a structure. It's an open area, right? You've got the nasopharynx, oropharynx, and laryngeal or laryngopharynx, right? There was a lot more constriction in there than I would have anticipated. Like I mentioned a little while ago, it does make sense once you're more advanced to strategically close the structures above the vocal folds to create more distortion and a narrowing of airflow. But I saw especially on like that tea kettle scream, I saw it really squeezing up, right? More so than I would normally have been comfortable with. However, Will has been doing, I can't remember, I think it's 14 years. I think he's been doing vocals for 14 years. And like his vocal anatomy was gorgeous. Maybe that's weird for me to say. Also not being a doctor, I can't look at somebody's vocal cords and diagnose anything. But I know healthy vocal cords when I see them. And they looked phenomenal. So it's possible that moving forward as metal vocalists and as metal vocal coaches, because this is a big thing for people such as myself who teach metal vocals, it's possible we may need to rethink what the end game of metal vocals look like and mean. That being said, if you are a new vocalist, this is not me giving you a pass for constriction, right? This is, I'm saying maybe advanced vocalists can manage a little bit of constriction more so than we thought. I'm not saying that if you're brand new or you've only been doing it for a little while, that you can be like, hey, Mark said, squeeze my throat as hard as I can. I did not say that. Don't put that in my mouth. I didn't say that. Don't put those words in my mouth. Somebody's going to make a joke. I'm going to leave that in because somebody's going to make an inappropriate joke in the comments, and I'm ready for it. So what else did I think about this laryngoscopy? Truth be told, those were my main takeaways. A lot of the stuff that went on in there is stuff that is I would say fairly well known amongst the metal vocal world, but the things that were surprising were very surprising. And I think that we've got a lot more study, a lot more research, and hopefully a lot more scopes to do so that we can get a wider range of vocals and what's going on. That being said, I do want to give you a caveat. I do not think that laryngoscopies are a good way for new vocalists to teach themselves, right? Here's an example as to why. I know the basics of driving a car. I can get around town. I can watch an extremely accomplished driver, maybe someone doing stunts in movies, like peeling out and peeling out and doing like donuts, and you're already seeing the gap in my automotive knowledge here, but doing like these crazy stunts and things. I could even see a view inside of the cockpit, but if I got in the cockpit, I would wreck that car. I would smash it to bits, right? Because seeing something is not the same as knowing something, right? You don't watch a video and then, Matrix style, it downloads into your brain and you're like, I know Kung Fu, right? Doesn't work that way. I think it can be really great to inform the way that you think about things. I think that vocalists should watch laryngoscopies. I think laryngoscopies, why am I so back and forth on that word? I'm going to leave it though. I do think that metal vocalists should watch these videos because knowing the structures is really important, right? But do not watch the Will Ramos video that Kirk and Elizabeth put up. Do not try to twist your larynx, because one thing that I didn't think about until he said it, but Dr. Ingo Titze said, we don't know at this point if that twist is more genetic or something that can be trained. If he is not sure, you're not sure. And if you see one fear that I have is, okay, the internet is not a bad place for metal vocal information. There are a lot of good places and a lot of very intelligent, educated, smart people talking about metal vocals who you can trust. If I said the internet sucked for metal vocal knowledge, I'd kind of be spiting myself, right? That'd be kind of like, shooting myself in the foot moment. However, sometimes you see quick tutorials on the TikToks and the YouTubes, and you can tell, I can tell, that these people found an exercise that works for them. They don't know why it works for them. They don't really know what goes into it. And now they're just telling you to do it. I saw a video, oh Lord. Admittedly, this guy on TikTok said he didn't claim to be a vocal coach, so I guess that's something. But he also said you needed to build up scar tissue. He also said it needs to hurt, and you just push through the pain. Yeah, not true at all. So if you see a video of somebody saying that they can teach you how to twist the larynx like Will Ramos, don't trust it. I don't know how to do that. Nobody else knows how to do that, to my knowledge. It's a very new thing on the landscape, as far as I'm aware. And even if there is a paper out there that I'm unaware of that could teach you how to make that motion in conjunction with metal vocals, that doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it unguided. So yes, if those start circulating, just swipe by it, click next, don't do it. Okay, that's my little caveat. Another cool thing I thought of, having watched the video and just thinking about it, is how, and this is a bit of a hot take, but it seems that as the music gets more and more distorted, more and more heavy, more and more dark and more brutal, shall we say, it seems like the distinction between false chord and fry, how do I say this, gets blurry, perhaps? Gets blurry? Because, one thing about me, and I think about a lot of other people, is it's very important to always be open to new information and accept it once it comes your way, if it's good information, right? And so I've seen people on the internet be like, hey, here's a Will Ramos scream, and they use a fry technique, and it sounds exactly the same. Then I've heard people, do a Will Ramos scream, and they're like using a false chord, and it sounds almost identical, right? This I think is a concept that needs to be understood, and I kind of try to subtly push in my videos, is that it is very important to know the difference between false chord and fry. You should. It's a great place. When you're learning vocals, it's great to start with one or the other. Anybody who knows me knows that I start most people with false chord, because if you can grunt and breathe, you can do false chord. It's easy. And I'm a lazy piece, so I always go the easy route. That's just the truth, right? However, as these techniques get more and more advanced, and as vocalists, create more nuanced sounds, one suspicion I've always had, and I'm certainly not the first person to have this suspicion, I'm not claiming any of these thoughts are original Chord Vox Academy thoughts, but that the arytenoids and the aryepiglottic folds play such a role in more advanced sounds that we should come up with terminology that includes them or maybe even makes them their own vocal style. I'm not so sure, right? For example, a lot of people describe me as being a false chord vocalist, right? Which, sure, I'll take it, right? Because I don't do, like, in none of my music do I use that traditional, like, you know, grudgy TV static fry tone. I just don't use it. I don't really like it, but that's just me, right? But yet again, this, which that is like traditionally a false chord vocal, the death metal growl, right? And this, they don't feel the same at all. To learn how to do the second one, I had to learn how to do the first one, right? And there is no fry involvement in that, right? I can add a little bit of fry to it, but it's not required. So I think that this video kind of shows that it may be time for the broader view of metal vocals. And when I say maybe time, I really mean might be, maybe. Too early to draw any serious conclusions. But it may be time to change the way that we think of metal vocals. Not everything is just a false chord or a fry. There are other things going on. There are other balances going on. Maybe utilizing your arytenoids and aryepiglottic folds should become its own thing. I often just call them like arytenoidal screams. Basically, that's right. It's based on that that sound of the arytenoids kind of flopping around. Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent, but those are some of my thoughts. It'll be interesting to see how the landscape changes over time as a result of this video. Anyways, hot takes done. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much everything I've got. Huge thanks to the Charismatic Voice, Kirk and Elizabeth, for doing this video. I think it's going to be a great help to the metal vocal community. I think it's really important. I think it's a good moment, and I really hope they keep going, right? Because like I said, you know, the metal vocal community, right? I'm not trying to be like, woe is me, right? I've had a very lucky life where I've, you know, not had to deal with too much of it, but we were seen as non-musicians for a very, very long time, and we still kind of are. So I think that these videos bring, you know, that community that's kind of been made fun of for a while, bring them to light. And I hope that their videos, if they continue to do these studies and these videos of, you know, metal vocalists' throats, I hope that those videos, you know, kind of uplift the community a little bit, because there are so many people doing really good work out there. I actually made a list, and I'm just going to read it because I don't want to forget anybody, even though I know I'll forget some people. But again, Enrico of Hideous Divinity, for his studies and seminar, he's done seminars, he's done studies. It's pretty cool stuff. I'm excited to dig into them. Brandon Kennedy, his laryngoscopy and the insights drawn from it, super helpful. Melissa Cross, obviously, that was a while ago, right? And she teaches more of like the fundamental sounds, but I think without having her, you know, back in I think it was the early 2000s, saying like, hey, metal vocals can be a serious endeavor that we can all respect. I think we probably I wouldn't be making this video today. I wouldn't be doing the job I'm doing today. And then Krzysztof Izdebski, right? I didn't mention him, but you can watch a cool video that involves him. It's called Metal Vocalists Are Just Big Babies or something like that. And he basically says that like, a lot of babies can make metal vocal sounds naturally, and then we unlearn how to do it as we grow up, right? So it's an observation that he made. And then anybody else who I've missed, I apologize. Like I said, this information can be hard to find if you don't know where to look for it. And, you know, I hope that, I would love to see some laryngoscopies with Dickie Allen. Yes, I'm reading a list right now. Dickie Allen, Alex Terrible, Courtney LaPlante, Tatiana Schmaluk. Sorry, I tried. Dave Simonich, Brian Garris, Ben Durer, Kyle Anderson, Phil Bozeman, Chris Motionless. I mean, we could go on and on. I also think it would be really cool for, you know, if in the future videos, some other experts are pulled in, like maybe Enrico, right? I'm currently talking with Enrico and maybe having him on the channel, hopefully, if it works out, having him on the channel pretty soon to talk metal vocals. Because I think Elizabeth's knowledge and Elizabeth's expertise paired with these people would be really, really helpful. Maybe some coaches, maybe some people who have studied, maybe Krzysztof, right? Who's to say, right? And then for anybody watching this video, if the Will Ramos video sparked a fire within you, which I hope it did. I hope you watched that video that the Charismatic Voice put up, and you saw that metal vocals are something that can be done safely, that can be done, with a lot of fun, and a lot of safety. And if you're like, it's time, I'm ready to learn this. Some people can self-teach and they do an excellent job of it. Not everybody needs vocal lessons. Not everybody does, at least for metal vocals. I think there's always something to gain, but there are a lot of really good self-taught, there are a lot of really good self-taught vocalists out there, right? But if you want some one-on-one instruction, there are some people who are very, very good at that. Now, I haven't talked to any of the, well, I've talked to a few. This is a whole nother video. When looking at vocal coaches, look into them, study them, make sure they practice what they preach. They should have some students that you can see as examples, right? Not every student is going to be an amazing, wow, success story, but they should have a good chunk of people that they've helped and helped well. Hopefully they're good vocalists too. But you've got David Benitez of Extreme Vocal Institute. You've got Mary Z of Voice Hacks. You've got Dave from Riff Shop. You've got, it's a smaller channel, but Emil from Scream Theory. He's pretty good. You've also got, I made a list here. You've got Dave Benitez, Brandon Kennedy of Unified Extreme Vocal Academy. I don't know if he's doing anything anymore. His YouTube channel isn't very active. Maybe he's more active on different platforms, who's to say. And then, of course, me, Cardivox Academy. This is my full-time job. I think amongst all of us, we've had hundreds of thousands. I haven't had thousands of students, but I've had hundreds, probably close to 1,000 of students that we've helped grow and, helped find vocal success. It's a long journey. Don't go to any of the people I've mentioned and expect that in 2 or 3 lessons, you're going to go from 0 to Will Ramos. It's not going to happen, but they can guide you on a long-term journey and make sure that that long-term journey is going to be steady and rewarding and bountiful. So again, the only of these 2 people that I've talked to is Dave from Riff Shop, very briefly, just for like about an hour. And then I had a Discord call with Emil. Emil is a really cool guy. But anyways, check out all those people, try a couple. I would love to help you with your vocals. That's my full-time job. And it would be great. Again, thank you all for watching. Big thanks to the Charismatic Voice for putting up this video. It's super exciting. I'm really excited to see, where they take this, and to see who else they draw from not just metal vocalists, but the metal vocal community. Because after all, more data means better research. More research means better knowledge. Better knowledge means a better outcome for metal vocalists and musicians all across the big, round, spherical globe. That's all I got. All right, I should set up this room because it's a mess. And eventually it needed to be not so echoey because I'm going to try to record some reaction videos. I'm going to try to record some reaction videos tomorrow. We'll see how the sound goes. Beyond that, as always, many thanks, much love. I'm out. I also think it was an excellent choice that they went with start that one over. Sip jitter juice, as old time hockey calls it. I'm also really glad that they went with why is that fucking hard to say? Will Ramos.